Welcome back to the garage. I have here a Joust board set I'm going to be looking at. I just finished my loom, which is an actual, it's an original Williams Defender or Stargate loom, one or the other. I just kind of modified it right here. I cut this big connector off that goes into the power supply and just directly soldered the power wires into my connector, my universal connector there, and all the other connections like the monitor connection just goes right up here. Now I did put a composite sync wire in this loom, and you can see it right here. This is what plugs into the board. That last wire right there is composite sync, which Williams never used composite sync. So I just kind of made a composite sync line for my monitor. I'm gonna plug it in and see what we get. It's all tagged working, but I don't know. I guess I wouldn't have it here if it worked. So we're going to check it out and see what's going on. Okay, I just got it hooked up, and you can see this one had an adapter because it's got 2146 or 2164 RAMs installed. So it's got the adapter for the power so that you don't fry the RAMs. But you can see right off, I get this comes up with a 0, which means everything checked out and it's running, program's running, but I have no video signal. So let's check for sync first. This is my sync signal, composite. Let me ground this better. I gotta try to get this grounded better. This thing just is tough. It doesn't want to work. Okay. Now let's see what we got. Okay. That's my sync going to the monitor. And this is red, green, and blue. Here's red. That's nothing happening. No green. No blue. But I got my sync signals, but I got no color signals. Okay, from working on Williams boards in the past, I know that the color signals are latched into this 374 and then driven out through this analog, digital to analog conversion section here. I'm just going to make sure that the digital signals are in this latch. I'm just going to probe each pin to make sure that there's a signal. Okay. And once it, come on. Okay, really, from a rough start, that looks like I at least have signals being latched. I have color signals being latched. I'm suspecting something with the digital analog. These transistors have to be turned on, in for that to work. So, and these are the 3 color transistors right here. You can see there's nothing going on, which means they're not getting turned on. And this is the collector. These are PNP. This is the collector. So the collector to base, there has to be a current from collector to base. turn it on, or collector to emitter. Emitter, base, collector. The collector for the emitter needs to go low right there. Okay, anyway, I'm going to look at the schematic and see what exactly turns these transistors on. I'm going to look at that and I'll be right back. Okay, I'm inside just kind of looking over the schematic a little bit as to why all my video red, green, and blue signals are stuck low. And if you can see right about in the middle of the screen, there's Q4, which is tied to the emitters of all three of the color transistors. And behind that is 4B, which its output, you can see the emitter of Q4 is tied high, which means the output of that gate at 4B would need to be low, would need to go low to turn on the transistors, because that'll create a current from the top of the emitter through to the base, which 4B, that output is connected to the base, and that's tied high, so it's going to be turned off until 4B goes low. So it goes low, creates a current through the base, creates a current, shunts the emitter to the collector, and it turns on the red, green, and blue transistors. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the output of 4B, pin 11, and make sure that there's a signal coming off of it. If there is, I'm going to replace Q4. If there is not, I'm going to check the inputs on 12 and 13. I'll actually put my scope, the 3 leads from my scope on that gate and make sure that gate is working correctly. I'm kind of expecting to see Q4 dead, to be honest. That transistor, I'm kind of expecting either 4B, pin 11 to be stuck high. As you can see, it's tied high. It's got to drive low. And if it's not, then those transistors are not going to turn on. And there's not going to be any video. Which is what is happening right now. So, pretty simple. I'll get out tomorrow and look at it. And we'll be able to dial in what this problem is. Well, I'm out doing some testing on this Joust board, and right now I am probing a 7474, which works in the sync circuit, and also this particular gate or flip-flop that I'm probing right now. Basically, I don't have the schematic up, so you can't see, but the output, this is Q bar, or inverse of Q. It drives circuitry that drives the video red, green, and blue, basically. Anyway, what I'm seeing here is Q is not driving high. That's as high as it's going to go. I'll try to just cycle. You can see it should be almost up. See, that's as high as it is. That it just went low. It's not driving high. Now if I go ahead and I put it on Q, which is not the inverse, I was just probing Q bar, which is inverse of Q, which is the signal that drives that circuitry, but this one is not connected to anything, so it doesn't matter. But you'll see the difference between the lows and the highs. This doesn't change much, but I'll try to cycle through until I find a change. It takes a minute. Yeah, see, that doesn't even... See, it should have went high right here. And it tries, but that's as high as it goes. This flip-flop is no good. So, just like in my last, the missile command repair, I had a bad 7474, and I got another bad 7474 on this board. So, I will go ahead and replace that chip and see what happens. Once again, I'm sitting here kind of editing this video, and I wanted to explain what is actually going on here a little bit better. You'll see 6C is that flip-flop that ended up being bad. And Q not, basically, pin 8 of 6C is the one that was stuck low, where it would not go high. So you had 4B looking at that as always being low. And I'm explaining in this video that the output of 4B there on 11 needs to go low to turn on the color transistors, basically. And the only way that's going to happen is if pins 13 and 12 are both 1. When they're 1, the output on 11 will be 0. And that's never going to happen in this case because pin 12 is always 0. That means that the output on 4B will always be 1. Because 12 has to be a 1, along with 13 being a 1, to get a 0 off of 11. That's why those color transistors were never turned on. Alright, I just replaced that 7474, this one right here. And you can see I still don't have video. I still don't have sync. It's a sync problem, I believe. But anyway, you'll see on the scope, this is now absolutely fixed. That top line, the yellow line, is the is Q and inverse Q. So that's absolutely fixed. So I'm glad I found that, because that's just a bad that was a bad chip. But the search continues for my sync issues. Alright, well, as you can see, Joust is up and running. What it turned out to be is my funky setup. I just didn't have my sync hooked up right. Just a little bit of a misunderstanding about how this VGA converter thing works. I basically got composite sync hooked to only horizontal sync on the VGA converter on the back of this monitor. So I don't know, it's weird. Anyway, this thing is, I'm gonna call it repaired. I ended up replacing the caps. I replaced these caps here, that one. I replaced these transistors. The ones that I pulled out were good. They tested okay, but you know, whatever. They're like 10 cents a piece. We did have a bad LS74. That was definitely bad. I replaced that. So yeah. Alright, I got the first Joust set fixed. Well, the first Joust ROM board, if you will. This is the same main board, but I have another Joust ROM board that has issues, I believe. I got it hooked up. Now that we got my video board all situated and got it to where I can see it on the monitor now, we're figuring out how to wire the sync up. I'm going to test and see what's up with this this ROM board. This is a different Joust ROM board that I was told has some problems. So we're going to check that out. Go ahead and plug in my power supply. And this thing isn't doing anything. I saw a 3. And this says, what's that say? Locked up. Locked up. What does that even mean? This is what's on the screen. Pretty much nothing. Well, the good thing is we know that the main CPU board here, we know that board's good. So this is all a ROM board problem. I think the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to eliminate these 2 special chips. I'll swap them out with the ones that are on the good ROM board. Rule that out. Hopefully it's not those. But I suspect that it's not those. I suspect it's probably some funky logic. Maybe even bad ROMs. Bad ROM sockets. I could have bad bus drivers. There's not much to it though. This should be an easy fix. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to rule out those 2 special chips right there and pray that it's not those. Okay, I just swapped the 2 special chips with the ones from the good Joust board. And I'm going to come back over and plug the thing back in. And hopefully we have the same problem. We do. Although that looks a lot better. It's giving me 333. This is what's on the screen. It's kind of junky. What I'm going to do now, because I got different results from the known good special chips, I'm going to put these 2 in my good Joust ROM board, and hopefully they work. Because if they don't, I don't even know what those are. It's some kind of a CPU of some sort. I don't know. I know it takes addressing and data inputs and outputs and stuff, so I'm not exactly sure. I'm going to do that. I'm going to pop these ones in my good ROM board and test that out and hope that works. Okay, yep, I put the 2 special chips back in my good Joust ROM board, and it boots up perfect, no problem. So that is good. So I'm just going to leave them in this one now. I'll leave the other ones in the other board. It must have been a socket issue or something that made that one do the 333. Remember how the first time it was jumbled nonsense kind of, and then after I changed these, it went 333 and then just kind of stuck on 3. It must have been bad sockets or something. But yeah, so I'm gonna put this one up. This one's good to go. And now I can, at least I know that the two special chips are good. So that's eliminated. This one right here is a 6821 peripheral interface adapter, which is no big deal. I've got those. And that's basically, you can test your, I believe it works with input and output. I know there's one, I think there's one on the widget board. I believe that has a PIA. I'm not sure. I won't know if that's good or bad until I have inputs and outputs hooked up. But I'm not worried about that right now. I just want to get it to this point. So I'll put the other ROM board back on and we'll start doing some testing. Okay, I just really quickly went through and I reset all of the ROMs in their sockets, and it flashed I believe it was 134 ROM error or something like that, some random nonsense. Yeah, now it's not doing anything. Anyway, I think what I'm going to do now is I am going to put all of these ROMs in my burner and verify them against ROM ident and make sure that the ROMs are all good. Because I probably have bad ROMs. So that'll be the next step that I do. Alrighty, I'm just sitting here putting this this video together, and this board was never going to work because you see that short pin right there. This is strapped to run 2732 ROMs, and this board had 2532 Joust ROMs on it. So there was no way this thing was going to run. Somebody at some point had just put a set of Joust ROMs on this board, thinking that it was just a straight swap where you didn't have to change the strapping. 2532 and 2732 ROMs have different pinouts. I didn't catch it at the time, obviously, but anyway, what I ended up doing with this board is this was ended up being the second or maybe even the first one of the Robotron boards. As I left the strapping for 2732s, and I just did a straight ROM swap between the two boards with the Robotron ROMs is what I ended up doing. And I did not use these 2532s at all. So I just wanted to make a quick note to point that out. Alrighty, I did verify that all of the ROMs are good, and I put the numbers on them because you can't tell. These labels are all flaked out. So yes, the ROMs are all good, which is good. The two special chips are good. Right now it's actually watchdogging. You can just tell by the tone it's the watchdog's going. So I think what I'm going to do is right here is watchdog disable. Basically clear the solder out and make sure it's open, and it'll disable the watchdog so that it'll try its best to run, but it won't run right. But that way I'll be able to hook on to these two buffers. That's where I'm going to start, is these two buffer chips, and find out exactly what's wrong, what's causing the fault on this board. Probably not much. It's probably one of those. That's my guess. It's one of those buffer drivers. So that's all I'm going to do for tonight. I eliminated a couple of things. I eliminated the ROMs. I eliminated the 2 special chips. Alrighty, we'll see you back in the garage here tomorrow. Well, I was just getting ready to shut down and get out of here for the night, and decided to start looking over this board, and it's missing a chip. Fat chance it's going to work. It's got a missing chip. You believe that? I'm sitting here trying to run this thing with and it's missing a chip. What is that chip? Here's my other Joust board. That is what is that? 14049. 14049. 14049. MC 14049. Let's see. MC 14049. Do I have you? I think I do. I have miscellaneous CMOS chips in here somewhere. I'll have to find. But yeah, I'm pretty sure I do have the 14409 chips. So I'll have to pop one in there, and then heck, it might run. Who knows? Well, I came back out to look at a few things. This is the Joust main board, which is working. It works. But the picture, and I got it unhooked. I was just kind of messing around with it a little bit. And the picture kind of flakes a little bit. The top and the bottom of it kind of look like they don't, it's like not synced up or something like that. I started probing around with my scope on these 153s, and they have inputs off of these 367s. The address bus goes into them, and it basically they mux the address for sharing with the hardware and the CPU. And yeah, whenever I'd probe on the address lines, it would really flake out the screen. And I had made myself a note when I was going through and testing some of this stuff. Joust, I put replace the 367 at 2D because it was my writing. It's funky a bit, kind of flaky. I made myself that note, so I'm going to take my own advice. I'm actually going to go a step further. This is 2D, the one that I said was not very stable. I'm going to replace both of these and hopefully take that wobble out of the picture a little bit. The flakiness, get rid of the flakiness. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to replace these two 367 drivers and see if it improves. Well, I decided to look at these Williams later ROM boards. This is from a Joust and a Robotron. They're identical boards. But a lot of people will say ribbon cable, ribbon cable, ribbon cable. I say sockets, sockets, sockets. Number one thing to go bad on these. If you, it's a pain in the ass, but if you want a reliable Williams board, you have to put new sockets on it. I'm doing the special chips too. So I'm going to get to work at plucking these legs out and then clearing them. And while I'm at it, while I'm working on this, I'm going to change the two buffers, the 44 and the 45 on both of them. because they're hard to get. This one you can't really get into to latch onto it with the test clip. So I'm just going to replace them. Just been working on pulling some of these pins out of this board. And these things are so oxidized that the smell is pretty overwhelming. These things are trash. There's no way this board is going to work with these sockets in this board. I mean, I have to take a break and let it air out a little bit. It stinks so bad from burning those oxidized pins. It's ridiculous. But I will trudge on. All right, the Williams board. Look at that. Look at that pile of garbage. See all them holes? Yeah. These were terrible. Those sockets, those are the same sockets Midway used, and they are junk. If you ever come across, you're working on a board, and they got those sockets on them, replace them. You get no connection. Those things were so oxidized, they stunk so bad as I was removing them. I'm amazed. You can't breathe life back into this board with those sockets on it. They have to be replaced. It's just that simple. So I'm going to replace this because that thing's all bent up and, you know, it's kind of ridiculous. This is the one that was missing the chip. It was a completely dead board. I might replace these two. I might as well. The headers, replace all the headers. I'm going to give these customs the same treatment I do the other customs. I'm going to clean the legs good, and I'm going to put them in a socket, and it'll stay. That'll be a fixture. It'll have that socket always, and then that socket will go into the socket on the board. Because those are custom chips. As far as I know, you cannot get those anywhere. So, yeah, you got to keep those. Those are precious right there. So yeah, I'm gonna populate this thing with sockets, and I got the 4049. I have those, so I'll put that in there. And I removed the bus drivers. I don't even think they're $1 a piece, so why not? Why not change them? You know, I mean, there's a 50-50 chance that they're bad. And if they're not good, they're old, and I mean, I've showed how old chips have worn out signals, is what I call it. The new chips always have a nice crisp signal, so why not replace it with a new one? I don't have any of these, so that's staying. That's basically a selector. It's like a 15 or 16 line to 1 mux. Basically, it's a selector. Kind of a weird chip. Yeah, so that's where I'm at with this. So I'll throw sockets in it, and I bet you this thing will be good to go. With sockets and ROMs and put everything, it'll probably work. And it'll be solid for years and years to come, which is the most important thing. It's not enough just to fix these. You want to be able to turn it on and it works. You know, fixing something, putting a Band-Aid on something, and okay, it works now, then you want to go play the game, you throw the switch, and you're getting the nonsense errors, 1, 3, 3, when you know you have all good RAM. That kind of stuff with these Williams boards is tedious. So sockets are a big deal. Okay, I'm going to get to that. Alrighty, the Robotron board. All rebuilt. New sockets everywhere. The two drivers are new. Every socket is new. There's that 4049 chip. I put new connectors on it. You can see it's running right now. I don't have this go to my video screen because for some reason these things right here that you get on eBay, they do not like Williams boards. Williams uses a like 294 by 240 resolution, and these things don't like that. They don't want to display it, so I don't send it to it. I know the board's working. The only thing is though, this ribbon cable is bad, I think. It might not be though. There's some logic up here that I want to check out. I want to look at there's a couple 74 flip-flops. There's a couple simple gate chips. There's nothing complex up there. But I do want to look at those gates and make sure everything's working right and working good. Because a lot of times when I start it, it'll flash a ROM number 3 error or something like that. So it's either the ribbon cable or it's some funky logic, which I'll get around to hooking up to it and checking it all out. But yeah, nice and redone. Alright, working on the Robotron board set again. I put a new cable on it. Here's my old cable. It's given me, I'll reset it. It's given me a random like 204 over and over. It always starts with 204. But it runs. It'll clear out and go to 0. I'm trying to capture a single pulse out of this 7404. Let's see if it'll capture it. Let's do this again. I want to run it, and I want to reset and hit single. That's what I think's going on. That is, it's being, my scope is catching it as a pulse downward. This is the input and this is the output of the 7404. And I just put it on single so that it'll catch a single pulse on the downslope. And so it catches it, but that ain't going to register anything. And it's really the only thing I can find. Every other logic on this board looks great, other than I haven't really looked at this. I haven't looked at that at all. I don't know. But as far as things that fail often, the 7404 is kind of what I'm looking at. And that should be a lot better pulse than that. So I'm thinking this thing is sending pulses out to try to just do whatever it does. And that's not cutting it. So I think I'm going to replace that 74LS04. And I think that'll probably clear up my problem of it giving me a 204 ROM error every time. Either that or maybe that ROM is funky. I don't know. That'll be a last resort to replace the ROM. But I'm going to do the 7404 first and see what happens. See if that clears up and it just goes straight to 0. Alrighty, I got a new 74 LS04, and there was a couple .1 microfarad caps over decoupling capacitors over there that I had forgotten, so I put those in, and I'll reset it. Two, 0, 4, same crap. So it's one of two things now. Has to be one of two things. It's either this ROM is bad, which I don't think that ROM is bad. If you look at the schematic, everything goes that goes into that 7-segment display chip there comes off of the PIA. Oh boy, you can't see. Well, anyway, on the schematic, it's all off of this PIA chip. I have those, so I think I'm going to pull that and put a socket in the board and try a new one. That PIA might be bad. I just want to clear up this. It shouldn't be giving me a ROM error. And if it turns out to be the ROM, then I can just put this original PIA back in the board and burn a new ROM. But I'm suspecting this before I'm suspecting a ROM, to be honest, because I just burnt these ROMs and, well, I don't know. It could be bad, but I think I'm gonna go ahead and socket that and see if that's the problem first. Alrighty. Well, I replaced the PIA chip. Well, I pulled it out and I put a brand new one in there, and it was doing the same thing, giving me the ROM error before it would go to 0. So I reburnt ROM 4, and now I'm going to reset it. It might go to 0, it might give me a different ROM. It's going to 0. This test system is touchy with these ROMs. If it doesn't like the ROM, it'll spit it at you, even if the ROM is good. But I reburnt ROM 4, and all of a sudden it's good. But when I first fired it back up, I'm going to turn it off and start it from power on. It flashed ROM 9 at me the first time. Okay, it's on. And now it's going right to 0. But it kind of flaked a little bit. It's still not liking one of these ROMs. But it's running and it's working. It's just not liking the ROMs really. I'm going to reset. It's going right to 0 now. Do you see that, how it flashes 3 really quick? I don't know what that's all about. But that PIA, that's the original one. I just put it back in the socket. Just save my new one. We're going to go with this how it is, because I don't want to burn a whole new set of ROMs. If it, what I'll do, my friend has a Robotron. I'll take this over and throw it in his game, and we'll put it through its paces for a couple of hours, 2-3 hours, and I'm pretty confident that it's good to go. Okay, this is the final Williams Robotron / Joust PCB ROM board. This one had already had a new ribbon cable on it, and it was hot glued. I just did a socket swap. I replaced all the sockets. I replaced the power connector, the two caps here. These sockets, the two bus drivers are new. So what I'm getting is it starts, it'll boot to 0, and then it flashes 3 and goes dead. It's resetting over and over and over. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through these logic chips. I'm going to analyze those and see what's going on. I'm sitting here testing this Robotron ROM board, and that's an inverter. Input on is yellow and the output is right beneath it. You can see there is no output. But what I'm trying to verify that I'm breaking through the crust and I got a good connection. I think this is just a dead lag right here. Yeah, that output's not doing anything. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this clip off and probe right down at the pad. I want to make sure that this line really is dead because it's really crusty. The legs on this, it's a 7404 and it's really crusty. And that looks like the output is pin 8, 9, 10. Yeah. It's, yep, pin 10. Pop this off, and let's put it on running, and probe pin 10. Yeah, it's not that crusty. 8, 9, 10. This is 11. This is the input line. I should be seeing this pulse low. Oops. 8, 9. Oh shoot, I'm on the wrong freaking chip. Goodness gracious, it's early. Pin 10. 8, 9, 10. Let's see if this does anything. I've broken through the crust now. It's not doing anything. Here's the input. Yeah, you see a clear signal there. And this is the output. And I know I'm breaking through this crust. And there is no output. Okay. 7404 is dead. Garbage. Trash. So I'm going to replace that and see if this thing will stay running. Yep, that 7404 right in the center of the screen. pin 11 out to pin 10 is the one that is dead, and that goes into this 4-input NOR gate, which creates this control signal. I'm not sure what that is, but that is directly off of the 74154, which is basically, it is a it's just a control line. So yeah, we're missing a control line. We have a bad control line, I should say. It's not missing, it's just not right. So yeah, that should really change things up, fixing that. Got the chip out of the board. And there it is. Well, I got the old Radio Shack digital soldering station back out to solder this new chip in. I just wanted to say, this thing I bought at a Radio Shack about, I'd say 12 years ago, at least. And this thing has been gold. I have used basically one tip for that whole time. This is the best soldering station that I've ever had. And I still got all these tips. This thing has been gold. Okay, I replaced the 04. And now it's running, not resetting. What this does, and both of my Robotron ROM boards that I've fixed do this. They start and then they flash 3 really quick. So I think maybe this CMOS RAM is bad. The Joust board doesn't do it, but both of the Robotron boards do it. So it must be something in the code that's causing that to flash. It just flashes really quick, I'll show you. And both of the Robotron boards do it. So I'm not concerned about it. You'll see it go to 0. It'll flash 3 real quick. See that? And then it stays 0 though. So this board's running, working. So that will do it for my Williams boards. I fixed this board. It just had a bad 7404. And I replaced the bus drivers to kind of clean that up. And I believe that's all I did to this. I put new caps in it, and up here these transistors were new, even though they weren't bad. But and then the ROM boards were a major overhaul. Both of the Robotron ROM boards were absolutely nasty with sockets. So I replaced all the sockets. The 7404 on both of them I replaced. This one was actually bad though. The other one wasn't bad. It was just that situation where this flashes 3. No big deal. Okay. That is it for the Robotron stuff. Williams stuff. Last video. I have the screen hooked up. These boards right here do not work with positive sync. It has to be negative sync. Robotron. This converter board is my old one. I'm not running this with my new one, although I could. This one it's got a little flaky on the top where it flakes a little bit like that and a little bit down here. But yeah, Robotron. So I have 2 of these converter boards now. My other one has a perfect picture. This one just kind of flakes up in the corners. That's just something wrong with the board. But it does work. I mean, there it is right there, Robotron. want to wait for the attract screen again. This is such a cool game. Here we go. Thanks for watching. And the last thing you have to do when you're done, because you have to cut this little trace right here to make the sync negative to work with your RGB converter. So the last thing to do is re-jump that to make the sync positive so that it'll work as it should with a arcade monitor with positive sync. And that's it.